The five-pointed star tattoo on her shoulder blade was barely visible through her uniform, just a small outline that looked like something a teenager might get. Petty Officer Rachel Martinez worked in the base communications center, routing encrypted messages and maintaining radio equipment. The other sailors called it Prison Inc. behind her back, laughing at what they assumed was a poor life choice. Until SEAL Commander Davidson walked into the comm center and caught a glimpse of that star. His expression went from casual to stunned in an instant. That wasn't just any star. It was the classified marker of Task Force North Star, the most covert naval intelligence unit in existence. Welcome to Hidden Heroes. Before we continue this emotional story, tell us in the comments from which city in the world are you watching this video today. And if you think stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button to support the channel. We're growing every day, and I sincerely thank you for being a part of it. Naval Support Activity Bahrain sat like a fortress in the Persian Gulf, its concrete structures rising from reclaimed land where American naval operations coordinated some of the most sensitive missions in the Middle East. The base hummed with constant activity, supply ships offloading cargo, aircraft launching on reconnaissance flights, and in the heart of it all, the communications center where vital intelligence flowed like digital blood through encrypted channels. Petty Officer First Class Rachel Martinez had worked in that communications center for 18 months, managing the flow of classified information with the kind of quiet competence that kept operations running smoothly while drawing minimal attention. At 26, she possessed the technical expertise to handle the Navy's most sophisticated encryption systems and the discipline to process sensitive intelligence without asking questions that weren't her business. To her colleagues, Rachel was reliable but unremarkable. She arrived at Euro 600 sharp, took her position at Console Station 3, and spent 12-hour shifts routing communications between various command elements. Her work was critical to mission success, but it was the kind of behind-the-scenes contribution that rarely earned recognition beyond annual performance evaluations that consistently rated her as meets expectations. Rachel's appearance reinforced her invisibility. Average height, brown hair kept in regulation style, minimal makeup, uniform always properly pressed but never drawing attention. She spoke when necessary, contributed useful technical insights during briefings, and maintained professional relationships with her coworkers without developing the kind of personal friendships that might complicate operational security. But there was one detail that marked Rachel as different, though most people who noticed it drew entirely wrong conclusions. A small, five-pointed star tattoo, roughly an inch in diameter, positioned on her left shoulder blade where it was normally concealed by her uniform but occasionally visible when she reached for equipment or adjusted her posture. The tattoo looked simple, even amateur, just black lines forming a basic star shape without additional detail or artistic flourish. To casual observers, it resembled something someone might get impulsively, perhaps during liberty in some foreign port, or as a youthful mistake that now served as a reminder of poor decision-making. Her fellow communications specialists had noticed the tattoo during their first week working together, when Rachel had reached across a bank of servers to reset a connection and her uniform shirt had shifted enough to reveal the ink. The reaction had been immediate, but quietly mocking. "Prison tattoo," Petty Officer Johnson had whispered to his station partner. Probably got it before she enlisted, trying to look tough. Others had different theories. Some assumed it was gang-related, evidence of a past Rachel was trying to leave behind. Others thought it might be connected to family, maybe a tribute to a deceased relative or childhood symbol. A few speculated it was simply poor judgment, the kind of decision someone makes when they're 18 and think a generic star looks meaningful. None of them considered that the tattoo might be intentionally simple, designed to look unremarkable while carrying significance that required specific knowledge to understand. None of them suspected that Rachel's quiet competence in handling classified communications might stem from experience with intelligence work that went far beyond routine message routing. Rachel was aware of the speculation but never corrected assumptions or provided explanations. She had learned long ago that allowing people to draw their own conclusions about her background was often the safest approach to maintaining operational security. If her colleagues wanted to believe she was just another technician with questionable taste in body art, that perception served her purposes perfectly. Her actual background was considerably more complex than her current role suggested. Rachel had joined the Navy at 19, initially planning a conventional career in information systems management. Her technical aptitude and security clearance had led to increasingly sensitive assignments, eventually bringing her to the attention of recruiters for specialized programs that operated in the spaces between official military structure and classified intelligence work. For 3 years, Rachel had been part of Task Force North Star, a highly compartmentalized unit that provided communication support for operations that couldn't use standard military channels. North Star operatives embedded with various commands, appearing to perform routine duties while actually facilitating intelligence flow for missions that required complete deniability. The work involved more than technical expertise. North Star personnel received training in counter-surveillance, advanced cryptography, and protocols for operating in hostile environments where discovery meant more than just career consequences. Rachel had spent months in locations where American forces weren't officially present, maintaining communication links for operations that would never appear in any public record. The star tattoo was both identification and testament. North Star operatives received the marking upon successful completion of their training, a permanent reminder of their commitment to missions that demanded absolute secrecy. The design was deliberately generic, a star that could represent anything from patriotism to personal significance, while containing specific details that would be recognizable to others with appropriate clearance. Rachel's assignment to Bahrain represented a transition from active North Star operations to a support role that utilized her specialized skills while providing cover for continued involvement in classified activities. Her official duties routing communications gave her legitimate access to intelligence channels, allowing her to perform additional functions that weren't reflected in her job description. To outside observers, Rachel Martinez was simply a competent communications technician with an unremarkable tattoo and no obvious connection to special operations. The perception was carefully maintained and entirely intentional. That perception began to crack on a Tuesday morning in October when SEAL Team 5 arrived at the base for mission preparation. The team had been conducting operations throughout the region for 6 months, building intelligence networks and preparing contingencies for scenarios that remained highly classified. Their presence at Bahrain was routine, a brief stop for resupply and communication updates before continuing their deployment. Commander James Davidson led the team with the quiet authority that came from 15 years in special operations. At 42, he possessed the kind of operational experience that made him valuable for missions requiring both tactical expertise and strategic thinking. His clearance level granted access to intelligence compartments that were restricted to a small number of personnel, including information about support units that operated in parallel with SEAL operations. Davidson had worked with North Star personnel on 3 previous deployments, though the nature of their support had been so compartmentalized that he'd never learned specific details about their backgrounds or current assignments. He knew North Star operatives existed, knew they provided critical intelligence support, and knew how to identify them when operational security required coordination. The SEAL team's arrival at the communications center was routine. They needed to transmit mission reports, receive updated intelligence packages, and coordinate communication protocols for their next operational phase. Davidson approached the duty desk where Rachel was managing the morning shift, expecting a standard interaction with base personnel. "We need secure transmission capability for classified traffic," Davidson said, presenting his credentials. Rachel reviewed the authorization codes, verified the team's clearance levels, and began setting up the appropriate communication channels. Her movements were efficient and professional, suggesting familiarity with high-level security protocols that went beyond routine training. As Rachel reached across the console to activate additional encryption systems, her uniform shirt shifted slightly, revealing the edge of her shoulder blade tattoo. Davidson's attention was initially casual, just peripheral awareness of movement, but something about the visible marking triggered recognition. The star shape was partially obscured, but Davidson could see enough detail to identify characteristics that weren't consistent with amateur tattoo work. The lines were precise, the proportions exact, and the positioning suggested intentional placement rather than impulsive decoration. Davidson's operational experience had taught him to notice details that others might miss, and something about Rachel's tattoo seemed significant in a way that required closer examination. As she continued setting up the communication systems, he positioned himself to get a better view of the marking. When Rachel leaned forward to access a lower control panel, her shirt pulled away from her shoulder blade enough to reveal the complete star design. Davidson's casual attention immediately shifted to sharp focus as he recognized specific details that confirmed his suspicion. The star wasn't just any five-pointed design. The proportions, line thickness, and overall execution matched exactly the identification marking used by Task Force North Star. Davidson had seen that precise symbol twice before, both times on personnel whose true assignments had been revealed only during operational necessity. Davidson's recognition was immediate and certain. The woman he had assumed was a routine communications technician was actually a North Star operative, currently working undercover assignment while maintaining capabilities that could be activated for specialized missions. The realization created an immediate shift in Davidson's perception and behavior. Rachel Martinez wasn't just base personnel providing communication support. She was a highly trained intelligence operative whose current role provided perfect cover for activities that supported SEAL operations at levels that remained classified even from most team members. Davidson's military training and operational experience had conditioned him to respond to North Star personnel with appropriate recognition of their specialized status. Despite their cover assignments and apparent junior rank, North Star operatives possessed clearances and capabilities that often exceeded those of conventional military personnel, including some officers. Without conscious decision, Davidson's posture shifted to attention, and he raised his hand in a formal salute directed at Rachel. The gesture was automatic, driven by protocols that had been drilled into him during briefings about interagency cooperation and recognition of specialized personnel. The salute created immediate silence in the communications center. Other personnel stopped their activities and stared, unable to understand why a SEAL commander would salute a petty officer first class who worked routine communication duties. The breach of normal protocol was so unexpected that several sailors assumed they had misunderstood what they were witnessing. Rachel's response was equally telling. Instead of confusion or surprise at receiving an inappropriate salute from a senior officer, she immediately returned the gesture with precision that suggested muscle memory rather than uncertainty. Her reaction confirmed Davidson's recognition while revealing to observers that something significant was occurring beyond their understanding. The exchange lasted only seconds, but its impact rippled through the communication center as personnel tried to process what they had witnessed. The casual mockery that had previously surrounded Rachel's tattoo suddenly seemed inappropriate, replaced by uncertainty about assumptions they had made regarding her background and current assignment. Davidson completed the salute and returned to standard military bearing, but his interaction with Rachel had fundamentally changed. He now addressed her with the respect accorded to someone whose actual capabilities and clearance level exceeded what her visible rank suggested. "Ma'am," Davidson said quietly, "we may require specialized communication protocols for our next operational phase. Would you be available for additional coordination?" Rachel nodded professionally. "I can provide whatever support your mission requires, Commander." The exchange used language that seemed routine to casual observers, but carried additional meaning for personnel, familiar with protocols governing interaction between conventional forces and specialized intelligence units. Davidson was requesting confirmation that Rachel's North Star capabilities could be activated if mission requirements demanded support that exceeded standard communication services. Other personnel in the communication center began to understand that they had been witnessing something outside their normal experience. The tattoo they had mocked as prison ink was apparently connected to Rachel's military service in ways they hadn't understood, and the respect shown by an experienced SEAL commander suggested their assumptions about her background had been entirely wrong. Word of the incident spread through the base with the speed that characterizes closed military communities. By evening, most personnel had heard some version of the story about the communications technician who had been saluted by a SEAL commander, though details varied depending on the source and most explanations involved speculation rather than factual understanding. Rachel continued her assigned duties without acknowledging the changed atmosphere or addressing questions from curious colleagues. Her professional demeanor remained consistent, but observant personnel noted subtle differences in how she was treated by visitors from other commands, and how certain officers now sought her input on matters that seemed beyond the scope of routine communication support. Davidson's team completed their mission preparation and departed Bahrain without further incident, but the commander made sure to file appropriate reports documenting the presence of North Star assets at the base. The reports went through channels that were invisible to most base personnel, but ensured that Rachel's capabilities would be noted by commanders planning future operations in the region. 3 weeks later, Rachel received new orders transferring her to a communication position with the 5th Fleet headquarters in Norfolk. The assignment represented a significant promotion in responsibility, and suggested that her cover assignment at Bahrain had served its intended purpose of maintaining her skills while providing intelligence support for regional operations. On her final day at the base, several colleagues approached Rachel with questions about her background and the significance of the interaction with Commander Davidson. She provided polite but uninformative responses, maintaining the operational security that had characterized her entire assignment. "Just doing my job," she said when pressed for details about her military experience. "Same as everyone else here." But her colleagues had learned enough to understand that Rachel's MID involved responsibilities and capabilities that extended far beyond what they had initially assumed. The star tattoo that had once seemed like a poor personal choice was now viewed with respect for significance they couldn't fully understand but had learned to acknowledge. Years later, when Davidson encountered other North Star personnel during subsequent deployments, he would tell them about the communications technician at Bahrain, whose cover had been so effective that her own colleagues had assumed her service tattoo was evidence of questionable judgment. The story became part of informal training about the importance of recognizing specialized personnel and avoiding assumptions based on apparent rank or assignment. Rachel continued her naval career in positions that utilized her North Star training while maintaining the kind of professional invisibility that allowed her to contribute to operations that remained classified long after their completion. Her star tattoo remained a simple black design that most people would dismiss as unremarkable decoration, carrying significance that only a select few were trained to recognize. The incident at Bahrain served as a reminder that military operations often depend on personnel whose true contributions remain hidden behind cover assignments and carefully maintained appearances. Recognition of their service comes not through public ceremonies or visible awards, but through moments of acknowledgement between professionals who understand the cost of missions that officially never happened. This story was brought to you by Hidden Heroes. Have you ever discovered that someone you underestimated had a background completely different from what you assumed? Tell us in the comments about times when first impressions proved entirely wrong. And if stories like this inspire you, hit that subscribe button. We'll see you in the next one.